This is the first of a series of short video segments showing how to do the ANOVA assignment. The first thing we need to do is to create an SPSS data file. We will use the demo example rather than the example or the real assignment for this demonstration. We could just enter the numbers directly into SPSS, like so. But this is kind of tedious and prone to error. So we will copy and paste first into Excel and then import the data into SPSS. Step 1, select the data table. We do this by going to the data, holding down the left mouse button, scrolling down to the entire table. I've got everything now. And then I'm going to right click and select copy. We don't need this anymore. Now what we want to do, the next step is to call up Excel. We'll ask for a blank workbook, and then we'll simply paste our data table into Excel. And note that we have 46 rows. The first row are variable names. We want to save this someplace where we will remember it. Let's put it in my desktop. And we'll call it ANOVA How To. We don't really need the Excel file anymore, so we will exit out. Next thing we want to do is to call up SPSS. We're going to call up a blank data file. We'll get rid of the data we entered earlier. And we're going to open a data file, and it's going to be an Excel file, and we're going to look for it on our desktop. We'll double click it, wait a few seconds, read the variable names from the first row. Sure, it only has one sheet that has any data on it, so we'll just click OK, and voila, there's our data. Let's clean it up a little bit. We're going to create X2 and X3 in a moment, so we will get rid of the X2 and X3 variables on there. And the other thing we'll do is we'll just make the columns 4 wide rather than 12 wide, just to make it a little bit neater. Now what we want to do is we want to create X2 and X3. We could create X2 by adding 1 to everybody in group 1 and subtracting 1 from everybody in group 2. So we could go 4, 4, 6, so forth. And here we're in group 2. We could go, we're subtracting 1, so that would be 1, that would be 3, that would be 1. And we could go down here to group 3 and just, it's the same as X1, so that would be 2, 4, 5, and so forth. Doing this is rather tedious and prone to error, so we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to create X2 and X3 in a slightly different way. What we're going to do is we're going to take this group variable and we're going to transform it into a new variable such that group 1 will be 1, group 2 will be -1, group 3, 4, and 5, groups 3, 4, and 5 will be 0. To do that, we'll go to Transform, Recode into a different variable. We'll choose group as the variable we want to recode, and let's call add x2 as the name of our new variable, and the old and new values, well, if it's a 1, we'll make it a 1. If group is 2, we'll make it a -1. If group is 3, we'll make it a 0. If group is 4, we'll make it a 0. And if group is 5, we'll make it a 0 also. And continue. Now we'll just click OK. And what we have is a new variable called addX2, where everybody in group 1 is given the value 1, everybody in group 2 is given the value -1, everybody else is given the value 0. So basically, to create x2, we're just going to have to add x2, this new variable, to x1. So to do that, we'll go to transform, compute variable. The new variable name will be x2. The expression will be x1, because we're going to add it to x1. We're going to add x2 to x1 and click OK. We'll get rid of that. So now we see that group, for example, the first score is x1 plus 1 or 4. 4 for group 2. We're subtracting 1, so this 2 becomes a 1, just like we did done by hand. And for groups 3, 4, and 5, they're the same as they were before. Now we don't really need add x2 anymore, because we've created x2, so we can clear that. We're going to do the same thing for x3. We're going to recode group into a new variable. This new variable we're going to call add x3. The old new values we're going to have to change a little bit, because 3 is now going to be a 1. We'll change it. 4 is going to be a -1. We'll change that. So now group 1 will be 1, group 2 will be a -1, group 3 will be a 1, and group 4 will be a -1. We'll click on continue, and the new variable will be add x3. You see now we have this add x3. Now we compute the new variable. The new variable is going to be x3, and we're going to add x3 to x1 just like we did before, and click OK. So now we can get rid of add x3 because we don't need that anymore. So now we have our new variables x2 and x3. Well, let's clean up our data set a little bit. We don't need any decimals in there because they're all zeros. So we'll change the decimals to zeros. We'll change the columns to 4. And we'll take x4 and move it to the end. So now our data view looks like x1, x2, x3, and x4. And we note, first of all, that x1 consists entirely of random numbers. These are random numbers from 2 to 8, and they were generated by the computer with a random number generator. What that means is that x1 has no effects. That is, if these are any differences between the means are simply due to chance or random error, and in x1 the null hypothesis is true. The null hypothesis being that there are no effects, and in this case there are no effects, so the null hypothesis is true. In x2, it's the same as x1. There's still random error, but in x2 there are real effects, And we know there are real effects because we added them. We added 1 to everybody in group 1. We subtracted 1 from everybody in group 2. So there are real effects. They might not be very big effects, but there are real effects in group 2. Group 3, like group 2, contains real effects, but because we added additionally 1 to group 3 and subtracted 1 from group 4, the effects in group 3 are larger. Now x4, we don't really know whether there are effects or not. x4 is much like what we encounter in real life when we have data. We have a set of data, we don't know what the effects are. So the next step will be doing the analysis of variance.